I love learning, and I love the idea of raising our standards. And I do believe that when asked to do so, people will rise to the occasion. I want to make it very clear tonight that my concern is not with teachers or any form of resistance to change. I first learned about the Common Core last spring at the end of year SEPs when I was handed a pamphlet about Utah adopting Common Core. I read through it after leaving and immediately became concerned. I thought, how is this going to work? How can we take an entire nation with all different demographics and place them in a narrow window without hurting the top and the bottom? In my mind, by becoming common, we're eliminating one's ability to soar. I started asking questions, and then even more questions, which led me to discover that this is a concerted effort to march our nation down a path to nationalized education, and I am very concerned. 2009 was a year of change. We got a new president, a new state superintendent, and a new governor. Oh, and there was a race called Race to the Top. President Obama and Arne Duncan, the U.S. Secretary of Education, created a contest in which states could win a share of the $4.35 billion federal money allotted from the Recovery Act of 2009, or the stimulus package, as many of us know. In July of 2009, the Race to the Top was officially announced. Sometimes in a race, we are so focused on the prize that we may not pay attention to the details. The states get points for the different things they do. We were asked to raise our standards, which I believe is wonderful. We were also asked to join a consortium of states, and we received points for doing so, and the more states, the better. That summer in 2009, the White House announced the second race, which was a race to create assessments for a share of the $330 million prize. Because in the application for the first race, Utah had already agreed to join this consortium, maybe we didn't pay attention to the rules for the second race. In December of 2009, Utah joined the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, and by so doing, Utah agreed to a few things that I'd like to share with you. First, in order to enter, the State Department of Education in Utah had to have the appropriate signatures, which included our governor and state superintendent. Utah had to agree to adopt the Common Core standards no later than December 31st, 2011, and to fully implement the assessment system no later than the 2014 to 2015 school year. Our state also agreed to follow all timelines, and we also had to agree with the consortium of states. We had to identify any barriers in state law and fix them, and our state agreed to adhere to all these requirements. Are there benefits in working with other states? Doesn't it sound great to have students the same so that when we move from state to state, we're all on the same page? Sure it does. But now Utah has to fight with all the other states in this consortium if we want to make a change, as stated in the bylaws of the SBAC. To me, this signals a loss of control. Do the administrators in Chicago know what is best for your children? Because I know they certainly don't know what is in the best interest of my children. Nor do they know all the great things that you've already been doing for the students here in Wasatch County. That's what's great about local control. I can take the concerns of my children and meet face-to-face with local administrators and teachers, and then you can have the power to make changes and advocate in behalf of my concerns. The federal government would like us to think that the states came up with this plan. They're claiming that this was a state-led initiative, and we can get out any time we want. But Utah is bound to this initiative in more ways than one. Yes, I know that Arne Duncan wrote a letter to our state superintendent, Larry Shumway, stating that Utah could get out of the standards whenever we want. But you tell me how. Aside from the contract we just entered into the SBAC, we also received a waiver to get out of No Child Left Behind as an incentive to commit to these standards. Regardless of how many people would agree that No Child Left Behind was a program that was set up for the public school system to fail, it was nonetheless a law. Our Constitution clearly states that only Congress can change laws, and the executive branch can enforce them. President Obama said, Congress hasn't been able to do it, so I will. So given that Congress cannot act, I am acting. I believe that our founding fathers were inspired enough to know that we needed a system of checks and balances in order to make sure things like this wouldn't happen. If Utah decides to get out of the Common Core Initiative, does that mean we have to pick No Child Left Behind back up? Also, states were threatened by the federal government that we will not receive our Title I money unless we adopt the Common Core. Will they make us repay our $14.4 billion share of the federally funded program? If Common Core really is so great, why would states need so many incentives to join and punishments if they don't join? This sounds like federal control to me. In the SBAC governing document, it also says in order to exit, we need to provide written notice with the statutory or policy reason for our exit. Further, the consortium of states must approve the request for us to leave. And remember, all the states have to agree to agree. And to top that off, this non-federal consortium of states that we've joined must get final approval for our exit from the United States Department of Education. How is that a state-run program? The 10th Amendment of our Constitution clearly states that education is the responsibility of the state and local governments. This is clearly a federal program, and all the mandates have made it difficult to get out already. How far do we travel down this path before we are so indebted to the program that it will be virtually impossible to get out? Utah must get out now. I cannot sit back and let us blindly be led down this path, because the truth is, most parents I speak with don't even know what Common Core is. At the most, they know what they were told at SEPs or back to school night, that everyone is so excited that Utah decided to raise its standards, and what a great tool this will be. Do I believe this? Yes. But for me, all the things I see coming down attached to the standards raise huge red flags and far outweigh any benefit. That's the plan. It has to look good. How else would the people pulling the strings get so many people and states to sign on to this? That is how they operate. We won't even see the effects of this for many years down the road. They're smarter than that. Will they slowly wrap a string around our neck, one mandate at a time, until there are so many cords it becomes nearly impossible to escape? Will this become the next unfunded mandate from the federal government?
Why are we concerned? We believe that educational decisions for individual students are best made at a local level by parents, teachers, and administrators that interact daily with our children. Number one, while standards have been set, the way to measure the success of the students' learning, the assessments, have not yet been created. Wasatch County School District has already spent tens of thousands of dollars paying dedicated teachers to build our curriculum. But since the assessments have not yet been completed, there's no way to know for sure how well our curriculum will align with the assessments. What if our students perform poorly on the assessments, and this creates a continual need for different and new curriculum to align with these federal assessments? Is this really local control? From my experience as a teacher, if my students aren't performing well on assessments, I must realign my curriculum to better match the assessments. But we've been told that teachers will not have access to the assessment questions. Teachers will only have access to the scores and will see a spectrum of data. We question how beneficial this limited information will really be to them in realigning their curriculum. To me, it seems obvious that we are paving the way to a nationalized curriculum. My good friend, who lives in Alpine School District, was actually told by her principal that he believes that since the whole country will now be purchasing the same textbooks, it will lower the cost, and that is one of the bonuses of adopting Common Core. Is this really what we want for our nation or our state? This is a clear example of how not only are our standards, but also our curriculum being dictated by these nationally set standards. If we study history, we need to always question and know the motives of individuals or groups that have a vested interest in the education of our children. We need to be clear that what we believe is best for our children aligns with what they may believe is best. Aristotle said, "All who have meditated on the art of governing mankind have been convinced that the fate of empires depends on the education of youth." Hitler declared, "In my great educative work, I am beginning with the young." We need to ask ourselves if our educational system in America could be used for similar purposes. Ezra Taft Benson, the former U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, said, quote, "Once that system is consolidated into one central source of authority, finance, and direction, it is entirely possible Should the educational system ever fall into the hands of the in power political faction or into the hands of an obscure but tightly knit group of professional social reformers, it could be used not to educate but to indoctrinate. We do not want to begin down a pathway that would prohibit decisions from being made by decentralized local units. There's a clear money trail behind nationalizing our education in America, and we should follow it. Our third concern is, do we have any idea of the projected cost of implementing these new standards? The Utah State Superintendent initially asked the legislators for $20 million to simply get the assessment program started. The local school districts will be required to match and possibly provide additional funds using their own district budgets. The projected costs are still unknown. Does anyone really have any idea how much all the associated implementation costs will be for cash-strapped states and districts like ours? Will this federal state mandated core make us continually more dependent upon federal funds and therefore allow the federal government to gain more control of our children's education? Our fourth concern is the creation of a national database with information on each of our children. The CCSSO, the Chief Council of State School Officers, is one of the groups behind the creation of Common Core standards. In their reauthorization document, one of their recommendations is to, quote, ensure links across early childhood, K-12, higher education, and workforce data systems. Their 10th recommendation states that all data collections must be managed at a single, comprehensive reporting office in the Education Department. We ask you tonight, as our school board, to not change any FERPA laws that protect our children's information. On February 21st, 2012, Davis County School Board has already passed by a 6-1 vote to change their local FERPA laws to allow the federal government and other organizations to have their students' personally identifiable information from education records without prior consent. We do not want our children's information given to anyone without parental consent. Our fifth concern is, are we really meeting the needs of the upper and lower students? As a teacher, I've experienced the vast range of students' ability in one's classroom, and now we are not only having common standards within our state, but also throughout the majority of our nation. Is this really allowing educators, administrators, and parents to individually meet the needs of their child? Or are we settling with just being common in order to create equality? I believe that by allowing people to fail, we allow people to succeed. What if Common Core really is a federal program that is being sold as a state-led initiative? Raising our standards is a good thing, but we have to ask ourselves, at what cost are we adopting these new standards? Do the benefits really outweigh the unknown risks? U.S. Representative Glenn Thompson from Georgia said it well in a hearing on Common Core standards on December 8, 2009. Quote, the goal of the initiative is to provide a voluntary, research and evidence-based set of standards for mathematics and English language arts. He continues, I want to emphasize the word voluntary in that description. I don't believe that anyone involved in the initiative intended for it to become the one and only set of academic standards in the United States. He continues, Secretary Duncan has not been shy about his intentions to dramatically reshape education through the Race to the Top Fund. He says, in other words, the Common Core is being transformed from a voluntary, state-based initiative to a set of federal academic standards with corresponding federal tests, end of quote. My hope tonight is that it is as clear to you as it is to me that this is a huge intrusion of the federal government into our schools, and I believe we must take a stand. At the very least, I hope I've given you reason to reconsider rubber stamping this.
What we're wondering is why we are very capable. Look at these great men that spent their summer dedicating to preparing curriculum for these students to raise their standards and to achieve higher. So why can't we do that without the federal government involved? That's what I would like to know, and like to encourage everybody here to do, because the state is telling us one thing and there is so much evidence saying something else. Please, this is not just about the standards. We signed on through the Race to the Top, through the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. Look through the governing documents, look through the contracts, see what we signed on for, and then go ask them questions. Because what the State Department of Education is telling us is something completely different from the research that I have had no sleep. I mean, no sleep lately. I have been working hours and hours and hours of this, and it's very frustrating to discover things and then have people come and try to tell you it's not true. So unless you've done the research yourself, I would suggest you do, and I'd be happy to help anyone, because what we have here is excellent. The standards, raising our standards, is excellent. I love it. I applaud the effort. I applaud the dedication the teachers have to meet these things, but let's do it without the federal ties, because they'll have control soon and we won't. Go ahead.
Oh, wait. Sorry, it's our meeting. So sorry.